You did a good job on that. What's up, everybody? It's Chad. We're back, kind of for season 4 again.
Episode point five.
Yeah, episode point 5. We did this quick episode because Duke Rodriquez is running for governor, and he agreed to do an interview with me. And I figured I would jump on here before we have the first episode next week, and jump on and have a quick interview. So, Duke, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Hey, you misspelled candidate.
Oh, I did. Yeah, he did misspell candidate.
Candidate.
Candidate. Okay, today's date is.
Yeah, candidate. Yeah. He's gonna work on that right now. So yeah, he'll fix it. That's funny that you noticed that. Thank you for that, by the way.
No problem.
How do you spell it?
CAN.
Oh, I get it now. I get it. Okay. All right. I got it. I'm an idiot.
CANIN. Yeah, CANIN. Yeah, there's another. But
we start off with how to spell candidate.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Anyway, Google it on your phone, and then we'll get going on
on
this episode.
CANDI.
We can redo the intro if you want.
No. We're not going to do that. We're letting this roll. Okay, how about I do it this way? Let me know what you think about this.
Oh, God. Candidate.
Oh, I need 2 N's. Sorry.
That's kind of clever, like 2 N's, candidate. Yeah. You know what? The misspelling turned into something funny.
Okay, there we go. We're good.
And on the spot, I couldn't even think of it either. It was a CNI. I was like, oh, crap.
There you go.
So, yeah, we came up with something clever at the end. Sorry about the misspell, everybody, but we'll get going on the podcast. So thanks, Duke. There's a cold opening for everyone. So welcome to the special episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. We're going to be interviewing Duke Rodriquez today, who's recently come out and said, he's going to be running for governor, has all the paperwork and everything, so it's official. So, Duke, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Chad.
Appreciate it. And I know your voice is a little under the weather, so we'll try not to have you shout or anything like that, or be too long, because we busy these days. So right off the bat, like I said, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to be trying to interview as many candidates as I can, like I did in 2018. I don't know if you remember when I did that, but I'm going to try to interview as many as I can. So this is you're the first one, so thank you so much for joining me and even agreeing to do this. So hopefully more will join on, and we'll see how it goes, because I have a feeling it's gonna be a little bit different this time. When it comes to this race and everything.
I think it'll be a little different, and it's going to be a whole lot more fun.
Yeah, and before I start with my questions and everything, could you please go ahead and introduce yourself to the people that probably don't know, or maybe this is their first time hearing about you or as a candidate, etc.
Yes. Okay. My name is Duke Rodriquez. I am running as a Republican candidate in the primary. We have a primary in June, and the successful winner there will face the Democratic nominee, and we have a general election in November. The big news for everyone listening is this will be the first time ever in New Mexico's history where those who are not Republicans, meaning those who are independents or declined to state, will be able to vote in that primary. So a lot of your listeners are independent voters, and they could actually tilt the scale on how things turn out.
And that's a really good point, because even nationally, the independent voter is the majority voter now. So independent, they don't want to say who they are, whatever. But yeah, that is the majority these days. And hearing that, just kind of proves that point even further. So we could see something different. And I've told people before, New Mexico tends to do this thing where we go Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. We're leaving a Democrat governor office now, and we could be heading to a Republican one. We don't know, but that's been the pattern so far, and it's been pretty true. So we'll see what happens, especially with the independent stuff going on. And I know there's going to be, you still have the primaries to get through and everything. And how many other candidates are there on the Republican side so far?
I think there are probably there's always in the industry. I understand they call them cats and dogs. You always have a whole bunch of people, but I think there are probably 3 possible candidates on the Democratic side, and probably 3 solid candidates on the Republican side. So I'd say 3 on each side. And keep in mind, Chet, when you brought that up, how different this will be. I am the first candidate across the entire country who owns an actual dispensary or cultivation running for a statewide office.
Oh, there you go. And that's something I've mentioned to other people too, is, if it does, end up being you and Deb Hanlon, we could see the first time in New Mexico history, if not in the nation, having two candidates that are pro cannabis, that are running on both sides, the Republican and the Democrat. That would be a first too, because we haven't really seen a pro cannabis Republican yet in New Mexico. And so, that will be a first.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much, and thank you for the info and everything. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into these questions and everything, and kind of get people to know who you are, what your stances are, what you bring to the table for for the voters. So my first question here is just kind of a general question. What's your overall vision for New Mexico over the next 4 years? What are your top priorities, and top priorities you would address if elected?
Well, it's in a short interview, it's hard to kind of give a lot of detail. Yeah. But it's pretty straightforward. I've been in New Mexico I actually figured out, I arrived in New Mexico in Silver City when I was about 14. And I've been in the States for 54 years continuously. Yeah. I've had a home, I've owned businesses. I have great love and admiration for New Mexico. I will tell you, though, that I've seen us stumble and fail repeatedly. And I mean both Democratic and Republican governors. And you've, Chad, have lived through the wars of how they treat cannabis. Susana Martinez said she was going to eliminate the medical cannabis program, if you remember that.
Yeah, she ran. That was her campaign promise.
That was her platform. And Michelle made all kinds of promises that she never kept.
Yeah, that's true.
So my vision is just on the macro level. People say, well, how can I remember, Duke, all the things? I make it very simple. I think like an acronym. Think about chess. Playing chess. Things that matter to New Mexicans are crime, healthcare, education, safety, sustainability. And it spells, believe it or not, chess. I keep telling people I'd rather play chess than play checkers. But within those major 5 categories, there's a lot of subcomponents. I favor, for example, term limits. I think it's 8 years and you're out. I favor, which I think you'll like this, I favor constitutional amendments. Can you imagine, Chad, if we would have put the legalization thing on the ballot, we would have done it 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things I'm talking about is breaking the mold we have now, making things better, not bitter, and giving people hope, which I think in many ways we've lost that. The final thing I'll say about what my vision is, it is built upon a belief. And that belief is, for those of us who've been around a long time, I don't believe that we are a poor state. You always hear, well, we can't do that because we're a poor state. Most people don't know this, Chad. We are the second largest producer of oil and gas in the U.S. We produce 2 million barrels a day. I want to get that natural resources we have, that position across our entire country, and elevate us once and for all and be a great state once again.
Nice. And a lot of those key things were questions I was going to ask, and in general as well. So I guess we can get, a little nitty gritty as fast as you can, so that way we have time to, bring up the community questions too. So for the first one, let's, what's up? What's up?
Not me.
Oh, okay, cool. I thought I heard something. I thought you said something. My bad. Okay, so for the first one was taxes. So a lot of people are concerned about taxes, and even in the cannabis industry, as we know that they're going to keep increasing unless something changes and happens. If that doesn't happen under this next session that we're going into, and you do get elected, are you going to look at not just the cannabis taxes, but the taxes overall in the state, or kind of fitting into a more of a broader perspective for people, or is it sustainable? What's your real taxes?
Unlike most candidates, I'm very familiar, for example, with the cannabis excise tax. I pay it every month. And I will tell you, it's too high and it's wrong.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
At the worst case, I think we should be treated like any other over-the-counter sale, be subject to gross receipts tax, and not anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm not a taxation fan. I believe in keeping as much money in people's pockets. I tend to believe, you might be surprised, I tend to believe we don't tax retirement benefits. You've worked the entire life. It seems kind of silly that we're going to tax you. And I've seen states look at this, Chad. Imagine this. I'm going to propose that those individuals under the age of 30 not be taxed so that they build up personal wealth so they can buy the home, so they can build personal wealth. Think about it. I mean, it wouldn't cost the state much. We have other resources. We just really suck, honestly, at how we handle those proceeds. So yeah, I would like to lower taxes and put more money in people's pockets. The number one thing facing everyone right now is affordability. When we talk about affordability, your phone, your fuel, all your daily expenses, your fuel. I keep kind of looking at things going, we have to make things better for people. It's just not our history of doing that right.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that's a huge thing. I've never heard anybody propose not taxing somebody under the age of 30. And that kind of makes sense because younger people don't cost the country as much as older people do because they don't go to the hospital as much.
That's correct.
Yeah. And so it kind of makes sense, reserve a lot of that stuff for the older crowd who needs those other special benefits and everything, and let the younger crowd have more money. So that way we can kind of build upon it and get to something where we can actually own a house, versus just renting all the time. So that's interesting.
Imagine that for a second, Chad. If we let the younger people under 30 to keep a larger share of their income, wouldn't they start building their future? We always say, well, when I was so-and-so, I bought a house or I bought that. Well, the price tag on doing those things now are much higher. So we've got to kind of rebalance the scales in favor of our younger people.
100%. Wow. Is there anything else that you want to mention on the tax part before we move on to the next question?
I ultimately believe in a step fashion. We get rid of the taxes at the high end of the over age 65. We get rid of it under 30. And ultimately, I believe that if we manage our proceeds right, hear me out, New Mexico should not have a personal income tax, period. No personal income tax. You're saying, how's that possible? No personal income tax in Texas. No personal income tax in Nevada. We are an oil and gas state. I don't believe we should have personal income tax in New Mexico.
I can't disagree with that, really.
I wholeheartedly agree.
100%. And, not many people have talked about, doing that here in New Mexico. And, there's offsets and this and that, and then you can get in the nitty gritty later on with it, of course. And I'm sure during the campaign, you're going to get more specific on all of these things too, as well. But, that's a great idea and plan at the beginning of that, and I'm sure a lot of New Mexicans would love that kind of tax relief. Not just, for people under 30, but nobody in the state at all paying that. And yeah, you're right. The Texans, they don't pay that. And people say, well, they have high property taxes, but that's if we decide to do what Texas does, and I hope we don't, because we have to learn from what other states do when they make mistakes versus doing the same thing.
We are a small state, only 2 million people.
Yeah,
it's not like that personal income tax is really supporting the budget. We're not Texas. We could easily do away with personal income tax and have plenty of proceeds and not miss a beat.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you for that one. That was very intriguing to hear. I look forward to hearing what other candidates have to say on the similar question on the topic. So the next one, we're going to talk about oil and gas. And this is something that the community did kind of ask a few times. The questions were worded differently. But what is your plan for oil and gas? You're obviously, wanting to lean in heavy into that industry because, it's given us a surplus in the state. Cannabis helped, but it's nothing near of what oil and gas actually produces in the state.
Just a little background. Most folks don't realize that, again, we are the second largest producer of oil and gas in the U.S.
Yeah.
When you look at it, Chad, that means we produce more than many countries.
Yeah.
We produce more than the country of Qatar.
Yeah.
We produce more than most Middle East countries. So yeah, you look at that and you go, what the heck? What we suck at is how we manage it. We just kind of tripped into it with fracking and we didn't realize what we have. If you know about the Permian Basin, if you look at the map, our geology, our rock is richer than Texas. On a per square foot basis, our property develops more, produces more, and is more and better quality oil than even West Texas. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Rather than us just being the number 2 producer, listen to me. I think we can be the largest producer of oil and gas in the U.S., surpass Texas. But that means we have to take the reins and manage it instead of just happen to see how much money did we make today. I'm proposing that we get a new Secretary of Energy. a new Secretary of Energy focused on our energy policies, our oil and gas production. And dig this though, Chad. Don't put that cabinet secretary in Santa Fe out of the action, located in southeastern New Mexico. Put it in either Roswell, Artesia, Hobbs, put it Carlsbad, put it where the action is, and have that secretary right there, encouraging, supporting, and building infrastructure so we can become a national power beyond number two. You know, what was it, the old Avis or Hertz? We just try harder. That's what we want to be. We want to create a state that harnesses its energy power and is a superpower when it comes in within the country of producing oil and gas.
Yeah. And, that's a great point there. And to back up on that, this came from the community as well. And I didn't even think to ask this question. It's the reason why I ask the community sometimes, because they come up with some great questions. We are number two, producer in the state, but, we are also a very poor state. There's a lot of people in a lot of poverty here. I'm driving through, the eastern New Mexico and the Permian Basin. I've seen it myself. There's certain little oil towns in there. Don't get me wrong. Artesia's doing great. They've always done great. But there's little nooks and crannies that look kind of ghetto. And you kind of wonder, well, why does it look like this? Why? If we're so rich, why don't we feel like we're rich?
It's real simple. And I have to say this till I'm blue in the face. And I wish if your listeners walk away with one message, repeat this. We are not a poor state. We are a poorly run state. That's our problem. We don't have a money problem. We have a management problem. Our system wants to create greater dependence, greater poverty. We have the record number of Medicaid recipients. 80% of all the babies born in New Mexico are born under Medicaid. We lead the country per capita in food stamps. And you wonder, well, like you said, Chad, how can we be this wealthy state and not show it in our people? How come we don't have a quality stadium? How come we don't have parks and trails and things that look like a wealthy state? And the reason why is because we mismanage it. We absolutely build more programs wastefully. We launch all new programs, and you hear it every day. And the current governor is probably the biggest offender. In her short term of 8 years, the annual budgets went from $5 billion to $12 billion, and the population was flat. I think if every one of your listeners sat back and thought about it, how did the budget more than double with no population growth? And the answer is complete and utter mismanagement.
Yeah. Interesting. Because this past year, they said that we were in a surplus of money, and I'm like, well, why aren't any of us, really feeling that? It doesn't feel like we are.
Wouldn't you feel it with no personal income tax? Wouldn't you feel it with spending on quality of life for New Mexicans who are here? Don't you deserve that dividend for our success? And you're not seeing it.
Yeah, exactly. And, we keep asking ourselves, why? Well, we got our answer there, and that does make more sense, when you look at it as the budget. And, me watching the legislative sessions every year, I have, kind of question like, well, shit, where's all this money going, man? Yeah, exactly. And even the cannabis money, that's just oil money. If the cannabis industry people all the time, they question, where's our money going? Why aren't the roads getting better? Why aren't the schools getting better? Mismanagement, and it's from the top down, from the the state government down to the city governments as well.
You think about it. Last year alone, a perfect example was I'm not sure if you remember, the Behavioral Health Trust Fund.
Yeah, I do actually, yeah.
We set aside, listen to this, Chad, we set aside $1 billion for this unproven, not sure how the money's going to be spent, just launch more programs for $1 billion.
Yeah.
That's craziness. And that's not just the one. We have what's called the New Mexico Medical Insurance Pool. Most people don't realize it's 3,000 people, and they cost us $165 million. And you know who's primarily covered in that? Non-citizens. So I'm telling you, we have plenty of resources. We're just not good at making the right decisions. Yeah.
Interesting. And I'm also curious to hear what the other candidates will have to say on this exact question that I'm going to ask them as well. Because, that's something that's huge. And, I really like to hear what other people say. And that's actually, another surprising answer that I've heard, so far, because, certain things that either we don't think about or, you're just kind of like, well, that's just the way it is.
No,
but it's not the way it has to be or has to remain. We have the power to change things, and hopefully we can for the better. And those are great ideas. So I have no problem with any of those ideas. Really.
In your time in Santa Fe, when you were walking around the roundhouse, I'm sure you saw these lobbyists, all these special interest groups, and everyone that comes there with their own agenda. So the average New Mexican is not being represented. That's got to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. Just me going there as a citizen lobbyist, I'm up against, millions of dollars, with people, and, I'm sitting there, this lone dude, trying to speak for patients. So, I get it and I feel it, and it's hard. And, we have some battles we win, but, at the end of the day, they ultimately get the win that they want, and get what they want. So yeah, that is unfortunate. And, a lot of times in the cannabis industry, a lot of people, don't like, the lobbyist efforts and stuff that happen with the state, because they only talk for, the people that they're speaking for is a small group of people. When you have a lobbyist for a company specific, that's different than trying to say that this lobbyist speaks for everybody, because it's kind of impossible to speak for everybody when only a few people are a part of that organization.
But picture this, Chad, and I don't mean to cut you off, but
no,
I really want to communicate with everyone out there and say, in your entire lifetime, this may be the single chance where you get to pick a candidate that represents our views, your views, that isn't just getting advice from someone else, but someone who's been in the trenches and understand what's it like to put up a cultivation, what's it like to deal with a dispensary, what's it like when the state issues 3,500 licenses, okay, without inspections, without any kind of quality control. What's it like? It blew up. We nearly have destroyed what could have been a very viable, positive cannabis industry. This time, you get to pick your person, your guy, and say, I want my agenda. How many times, Chad, have you guys had a demand or a petition letter to the governor's office for a moratorium? Did any of those things ever result in one change? Ever?
Not that I can really remember, in that sense.
Correct. This time, you've got a person on the inside who understands the struggles, the reality, the pains of being who we are and what we've done. Chad, you and I have known each other probably 10 years now.
Just about, actually. Yeah, 10 years. Yes,
with
you're
the
right.
old medical program. So we know what it took to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
Isn't it time that we take the reins back from what they've done to it?
I would agree. And, we'll see if, the voters agree with that as well. When the time comes. So, it's going to be up to them. I'm a voter myself, but I'm only one voter. So, it's going to be up to the voters themselves at the end of the day. And, we'll see. And I appreciate these answers so far, and everything. And, you being as truthful as you can with everything And obviously, you've been studying the state for a very long time of, the issues that are going on. So I'll give you props there. But this next one I'm going to talk about, it's kind of more recent and it's very controversial. And it's happening down here in the South, the data centers. I didn't know if I'm sure you know about those and everything. What's your stances on the data centers? I myself, I come from a technology background. I have my degree in IT. So when I graduated college, I didn't have anywhere to work. The only options I had were like NASA, the federal government, and like the state and city government. That was it. There's no other companies or anything. So for one, I do believe that it would bring more jobs, but at the same time, what are the effects of that? Water, energy, and also all the other stuff that comes along with it, and the other studies that are coming out with it. What is your plan and stance, when it comes to the data centers?
I'm willing to listen to how these data centers could benefit New Mexico. I'm willing to listen. I've not taken a hard line on it.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this. I'm not ready to commit to it without better information. Haven't we learned our lesson that when we tried to become call centers to the world, we put up all these call centers all over the state. And what happened? They used us for a while until they moved those jobs out. Mm-hmm. I feel really bad when I see all these data centers clustered in New Mexico and not looking at other states. Now, what do they see about us that they don't like about the other states? And sometimes I think they take advantage of us, our regulations, our climate, our control. So if we're going to do it, I don't want a model, I'm going to say this right now, that's just a win-win. I want a model that leans more favorable to New Mexico. And that's what we never always do. This is our home. This is our property. You know what? If you're coming over here, you've got to respect my rules. And my rules is you got to make it better than when you got here. You got to create jobs. You got to invest in our communities. You can't use us as a back office, whatever. We're not anybody's sweatshop. We're not only responsible for providing lunches and dinners and be a catering service. We're here to have good jobs with high salaries. And long as we hold those standards, we can make these things work. But if it means higher utility costs to people who live here today, then we need to rethink it. It's got to be a plus to us that are here.
Yeah. And on top of it, the water issue and everything like that, when, we have, industries in New Mexico that just suck the water, like pecan industry. Oh my God, the pecan industry sucks up so many billions of gallons of water in New Mexico. It's alarming, really. And I've talked to farmers and they said that industry is really only viable for the next 20 years. And then we're going to have to figure something out after that, because we're like the number 2 producer of pecans in the nation.
Well, picture this, though. If you talk about water quality, I kind of laugh at, have you noticed we like what I call vanity projects? The rail runner. I consider that a vanity project. Spaceport, sorry to offend anybody. It's a vanity project.
Yeah.
In El Paso, they built the country's 2nd largest desalination plant. We should have built that. We have the resources. We should improve the amount of water being produced here. We have desalination issues. Why are we doing the rail runner when we need water? We need
Porcelain Park.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Porcelain Park.
100%. So I'm more in favor, again, just use common sense.
Yeah.
Adopt policies and programs that benefit the population today. And as the Native Americans say, 7 generations into the future. Not just short-term fixes, not just because Bill Richardson thinks that, oh my God, the rail runner is so cool. No, desalination is much cooler.
Yeah. I kind of wish I had something against that one, because, the water is a big issue here in New Mexico. And we do need to figure something out on that. And we'll see if, that is something that'll work, because who knows what issues we're going to have down the road here soon. We have those unknown variables that we have to see. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see how the voters, really react to all this, here soon. And tomorrow, this episode will air, and everyone will get to see. So, you guys, if you agree, disagree, please, share it, and let's have the conversations and keep it going and everything like that, but let's be respectful at the same time. There's no reason for us to get super hostile and, get angry at each other, because I'm not sitting here yelling at Duke. Him and I have yelled at each other enough in the past that, there's no reason for us to yell if we disagree or not agree 100%. And it's like that with essentially anybody. I don't really need to yell at you because I don't agree with you. But don't yell at me. But anyway.
I'm glad you brought that up, Chad, because I looked at some of the comments.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call out people and point them out, but it cracks me up because I've seen the same people make the same complaint for so many years and never make a change. If you keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, what did we say that's a definition of? Crazy. Insanity. Exactly. If you had this one opportunity, there's no perfect candidate. I'm going to say that first of all. There is no perfect candidate. I saw some mean comments from that attorney, whatever her name is, and I laughed and said, she has a right to speak her mind. But Patricia, keep this in mind. If you've done the same thing over and over and you keep failing, isn't it time to try something that actually is going to work? No one knows this state better than I do when you look at the 6 candidates. All I say is weigh them out. If you love Deb Haaland, that's your choice. I'm not going to convince you. But if your mind is open, I know what your choice is going to be. And all I've said is give me a shot, listen, keep your mind open, and I think you'll make the right decision. It's that simple.
Yeah, and I think that should be the case for every candidate.
Correct.
Keep an open mind, listen. Don't just attack, listen, and then ask the hard questions. Of course, like the questions that you're most worried about, or maybe you have a concern or don't agree with them on something. Maybe there's a miscommunication somewhere. It's easier to communicate this way versus just being so aggressive. Because even me just saying, "Hey, I'm going to interview," and people got mad. I'm like, dude, I'm going to give everybody the same opportunity, and I'm probably going to respect them the same exact way. There's no reason for me to disrespect people on my own show.
I'm going to make it real simple for folks. When they really get down to it, they said, Duke, explain how you can win. Deb Haaland is going to be the likely Democratic nominee. Sam Bregman may not want to hear that, but that's just likely to be. The numbers are skewing extremely heavy for her.
Yeah.
That's okay. Might surprise people. I am likely to be the nominee for the Republicans. But in the end, the Democratic nominee is going to get about 40 points built in. That's their base. And the Republican candidate is going to get about 40 points built in. That's their base. I don't think I'm going to be the greatest person to convince their 40%. And that person's not going to convince the other 40%. But what's really going on, which is primarily your listeners, is we have that 20% in the middle. That 20% in the middle will decide how that splits, 50-50, 40-60. But in the end, that 20% in the middle will decide who the next governor is. And keep in mind, it won't take 1 million votes. Everybody goes, well, how many votes will it take? The last governor was elected with 350,000 votes. It's not a lot of people.
Yeah.
So there's 45,000 votes in the middle who are going to make those decisions. And I keep reminding people, do you remember when the medical program was at its peak? There was 165,000 cardholders.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to impact this election.
Yeah. And I tell people that all the time. It's actually really easy to lose elections in New Mexico. It's one reason why the lawmakers almost have no choice but to listen to us sometimes, because if not, they're going to lose. Like that they're going to lose that seat because it's super easy here. We see it all the time. So that is actually a really good point. Before I move on to the community questions and everything, because we're cutting close. I have 2 questions that are very important to me. Essentially public education. What's your plan for public education? My parents were teachers. My dad's 25 years teacher. My mom, 18 something years. Plus her city time. What's your plan? Is it for teachers, a better education? What's it going to be?
Okay. Just to give you some background, I favor teachers tremendously. Mm-hmm. I ran high school track and cross country in Alamogordo and Silver City.
Yeah. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Go Colts. Go Colts and Tigers.
Colts and Tigers.
That's right. But I will tell you, I wanted to be a school teacher. That was my dream. My dream was to be a high school teacher. In the fall, I would have my cross country team, and in the spring, I would have my track team, and I would win multiple state championships. I thought that would be the greatest life ever. That's all I needed. But it was those track coaches and those teachers who pulled me aside and said, Duke, don't do it. Don't do it. And you know why? Because they said, you're not going to be able to fully support your family. You're always going to struggle. And so I went into something I really didn't prefer, but it served me well. I went into accounting.
Yeah.
My point being is teachers matter more than ever. My goal with education is threefold. Number 1, strengthen teachers. Strengthen teachers. I have a program called the Teacher Protection Act. We need to make sure the teachers are back in control of what happens in the classroom, not the administrator, the teachers have to be safe. The teachers have to be paid more. The teacher's pension plan, this should concern your parents. Yeah. Teachers work 25, 30, 40 years. The average pension benefit they get now, Chad, is $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
$24,000 a year. That's an embarrassment. Our teachers deserve greater pay, greater security, and more control of their classroom. They are to be valued. They are practically, to me, first responders, period. They're the first. I agree. They see when those kids go hungry. They see when they face behavioral health issues. They know all those matters. So I'm not going to spend all the time. Number 1 is protect our teachers. Number 2 is provide them the support to get the classroom activity. I want all kids reading by the 3rd grade. Number 3 is proper testing. It's real simple. We got to test, and test. I come from the world, nothing gets better that is not measured. So you have to measure the progress, and we need to be accountable. It's not a money issue. Be very clear. The average amount of money we give right now to students in New Mexico from the legislature, $32,000 per student per year. That's higher than most private school tuition. We need to go back and make sure that money is not going to administration, is not going to buildings, is going to where the action really is, in the classroom.
I agree on most of that. When it comes to testing and stuff, it can get icky and stuff like that, and then it can be whatever. So it has to be implemented correctly, I guess is what I'm saying. When it comes to testing, because I've seen it just waste time, and I've been a part of it wasting time. But yeah, if it can be done correctly and it's doing, a service and making sure that we're on the right track, then I don't see why not. But when it gets too much and there's too much testing, then I do see it as an issue. But That all depends later on, when it gets to the nitty gritty and the fine stuff, so we won't even know if that, will be the case if anything happens. But I appreciate your answers on that and everything, because, education is a huge thing. People always bring up, we're last in education, we're, last in this and everything. And it's huge. We do need to fix that. And starting with the teachers as our backbone is the way to do it, not making the administrators more wealthy. Those dudes make like $300,000 a year sometimes, if not more. And
I hate that we've devalued teachers.
Me too.
It's an embarrassment.
Yeah, it is, and it's a slap in the face to everyone in the industry, in the education industry itself. Because my parents spent more time with my friends than they did with me when I was in middle school. Because they were middle school teachers. So, like, lucky for them, they got more time with my parents than I did because they were so dedicated as teachers. And, they should reward that, and they should be rewarded for that, and not just, give, nickels on a dime because, they decide to be a teacher. It's a very important role. So my final one before we move on to the community questions, veterans. And me being a veteran myself, coming from a long line of veterans too, what is your plan to help veterans, and not just with, veterans itself? I'm talking about healthcare, housing, entrepreneurship, workforce development.
We have, like I said, the largest sovereign fund, second largest sovereign fund in the U.S. What that means is we have all these permanent trust funds.
Yeah.
The land trust fund, the permanent trust fund. Our sovereign trust funds add up now to about $68 billion. Mm-hmm. That's larger than what California has. It's larger than what Illinois has. It's only second to Alaska. I want that money not sitting in Wall Street. I want that money redeployed in New Mexico. Small loans back to businesses, including cannabis companies, including veteran companies. Pull that money out of Wall Street, because a lot of it's not yielding the returns that it could have. And we could dedicate 300 million, 500 million of existing funds and not even feel a bump in the road. Yeah. It's simply about taking the resources we have and making sure we leverage it for the people we have now, the veterans, the disabled, our young people. Direct some of that money, as I just talked about, into down payment for a home assistance, interest-free loans, where you will match up to 80, 90% of the down payment. And we don't take a payment from you until you sell that property. We are time that we stop saying we can't do these things. Everything that I've talked about is real and possible, and not like years out. I mean immediately. And I've always said, if the legislature doesn't play along, the governor has the veto pen, and you have the ability to change attitudes very quickly.
Yeah. Sounds like Gary Johnson.
I worked with Gary.
It was a little bit of an inside joke. Yeah. And that's fair. I mentioned Gary Johnson because he probably vetoed the most bills of any governor in New Mexico. I think he holds the record for the most. So that's one thing to keep in mind is that if you don't agree, or if we all as a state don't agree with what the legislature is doing, you can veto it. As long as you're the kind of governor that listens. And that's going to be up to the voter again, like I've said many times, to come up with that. We're at the very beginning of this. I appreciate you coming on and doing the interview and everything. I want to thank you for that, and every candidate that's going to come on. Hopefully I can have as many as possible. But yeah, so now we're going to move on to the next one. There were so many other questions I want to ask, but what was that?
Please, I said, please.
Okay, cool. So let's get on to the community questions. And now these are ones I set out on Facebook, Instagram, all over to ask the community. What are some questions you want to ask Duke directly? And what I actually ended up doing is just copying and pasting them directly from Facebook to here, and I'll read them verbatim to you. You've already seen some of them. And Duke, you do see the posts that I post and many other people post as well. So those of you out there in internet land, people are listening and watching. Anyway, so this first one, and I've been hearing this one a lot, is residency. A lot of people are asking me to ask you what your residency is. So here it is. What state are you a resident of?
New Mexico.
There we go. Okay.
Very
so
simple. Yeah.
And, that I've been told by people, Duke voted in Arizona recently, this and that, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how they got the voter roll. But, that's what I've been told. And I figured I'd ask you directly, where you live or where you're a resident from. I kind of figured during the paperwork process, that would kind of be in there, but that I can't really say either I have any proof or evidence against that.
I equate it I've heard the question, and I say, if that's the most they want to talk about, I just smile.
Mhm.
I've had a home in Albuquerque continuously since 1979.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've lived in New Mexico longer than I think most of the candidates. I'd push back and say, for those who support Deb Haaland, where has she been the last 5 years? Okay.
Mhm.
My business is in New Mexico. My family's in New Mexico. My future's in New Mexico. I'm very proud to be a New Mexican. And that question's been asked over and over. But to me, it's like a birther. You remember back in the Obama days about the birther thing?
Yeah.
Where's his birth certificate? For those who enjoy this kind of chatter, make the most of it. I'm okay with it. But the bottom line is, I'm a New Mexican through and through.
Nice. And, the thing that I brought up the other day, I was like, if anything, maybe he just has property there. It doesn't make you a resident of that place, just having a property there. And people have property all over the nation and world. It's you're right, and you can do that. So
I have a second home in Arizona, and it's probably the worst kept secret.
I know I've called you a few times. Like, I'm on the plane to the Arizona real quick. I'm like, oh, okay, oh, yeah, you can call me later. So yeah. I visit Hawaii frequently, I lived in Hawaii for years, and stuff like that. So, maybe people actually think I'm from Hawaii sometimes. So, there's that, and I'm like, no, I lived there for like 4 years, man, but I loved it. It was great. And I had a great experience there, but no, I'm not from Hawaii. I was born on Holloman Air Force Base and raised in Alamogordo. Oh, wow. And then I joined the Army from there, and then I moved back, and then eventually ended up in Las Cruces. So, yeah. But anyway, it's not about me; it's about you. Let's keep it going. Some of these other ones. Now, here's one. It's a little more light, and I actually wanted to ask this one because it's important, and you're in the cannabis industry, and some of these do relate to cannabis in the questions. How does he think the New Mexico cannabis industry will be impacted by the federal government's rescheduling of cannabis to Schedule 3?
Just to remind everybody, I'm sure they're aware. President Trump signed an executive order to direct Congress, to direct the administration, the FDA and other parties within the administration, to move cannabis from a Schedule 1 substance to a Schedule 3. It takes us out of two categories. It recognizes, number one, that we have a absolute medical benefit. What a shocker. How many of us always knew that it was just a lie to incarcerate people?
Yeah.
And number two, it doesn't cause high level of dependency. In fact, the risk is low to moderate.
Yeah.
Low to moderate. And that's important on these both categories because it opens up a whole new world for us. It's not going to happen overnight, but I've said to people, this is the biggest game changer for us. New Mexico is a great place to produce high quality cannabis, not just from Ultra Health. I think there are plenty more that can produce equal or better. It's out there in various sizes, small and larger, period. But we have beautiful sunshine. We have great climate. We're not New Jersey. We're not Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
There are going to be 3 national growing regions in the country. And I've said this before. You won't grow it in Arizona. It just doesn't thrive there. It's going to grow in the Northwest, Washington and Oregon area. And it's going to grow actually very well in California. And the third largest category is New Mexico. What we do with it going forward will be up to us. So Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 creates a new breath of fresh air. How do we lean into it?
Yeah.
If we're going to succeed at it, you better make sure you have the right governor in Santa Fe as this thing rolls out.
Fair, because we saw the hemp debacle go down and everything, and how terrible that's been. Because I'm afraid that they're going to define cannabis and medical marijuana as two different things, and they just leave us in the dust essentially, like they did with hemp. Because the only difference between hemp and cannabis is a definition. And I'm fearful that they're going to do that with the Schedule 3 thing. And that's been my concern this whole time. So if they do that and we're stuck with this like 3-tier different thing, which is your plan? Say we get stuck on Schedule 1 as a adult industry. Are we going to try to kind of look at the tax thing in New Mexico to kind of help, or, what's the plan there?
I think that if I get elected governor, I will be probably the preeminent, if not the most knowledgeable cannabis governor in the United States. I think we'll have an opportunity to guide that policy. I think the White House will look to us. I think our congressmen and both the Senate and the House will look to us. having that kind of experience can't be matched.
Yeah.
If you're the governor of Massachusetts, what do you know about weed? Give me a break. All right.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest way that I can have an impact, and I think it's real, is I can walk the talk. I can make sure that they don't make the obvious blunders they did with hemp. And I can put forth a proposal that works not just for New Mexico, but certainly we can leverage the most, but that benefits the country. We can enter into compacts with other states to move product across state lines. These are things that no one else has already talked about, because you wouldn't know this unless you've been in the business.
Yeah.
So I know this sounds like bragging, but when you have somebody who's in the business, you have the ability to accelerate the change. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair, and I appreciate that one. We're gonna keep going with the questions and everything that I'm reading off verbatim. So this one right here, it's been asked a couple times, just differently every time, of course. This one, the way they asked it is, why did he want to restrict home grows both here in Arizona? And actually, you and I have yelled at each other on the phone over this issue back in the medical days, because, you know, the language of the bill back then and everything. But, you know, I guess this has to do with Arizona. I wasn't aware of it, but I've been seeing it a few times. I figured I'd ask you about it.
I think people have got the facts mixed up. I don't have a problem with home grows.
Yeah.
I'm okay with home grows.
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't think they dilute the market size. I think that for economic and personal reasons, I think New Mexicans should have the right for a home grow.
Yeah.
The question becomes when a home grow is 500 plants.
Yeah.
And the home grow is 300 plants. That's not a home grow.
Yeah.
But for personal consumption, I absolutely have no problem. I actually feel good about home grows being able to sell their product into the system. I don't think it's wrong. I mean, people worry about the insignificant, thinking it drives the entire system. That is not, but just a speck of the overall volume. It's not going to change the world. Just use common sense. Yeah.
And to clarify with everybody, the hang up that Duke and I had back in the day, and this was clarified later on after we yelled at each other, is he had an issue with the language that was in it, the way that it was written, because it wasn't probably being implemented correctly. And once we changed it in the Cannabis Regulation Act, he had no issue with it. And he straight up told me, I have no issue with home grows. They fixed it in the language and we're just going to drop it. And ever since then, I haven't heard anything from it. So, you know, that proves there that I will say that, yeah, that is one thing that I know personally that, you know, he has, you know, kind of let off on, was that, and it was only because of the language in our bill here. The Arizona thing, I don't know where that came from or where it is. I just heard it online as chatter, and I figured I would ask you directly about it, because, you know, what a great time to ask something like that than, you know, an interview.
Well, it's funny you asked about Arizona home grows. I've never been involved in the Arizona home grow debate, but everybody said, well, Duke had a hand in it. It's like, whatever, you know, we have bigger issues. Home growing is an essential element of evolution within the cannabis industry. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
What I'm really more focused on is the major blunders we've had, the number of licenses.
Yeah.
The licenses without inspections, the way we took off the guardrails. We destroyed the industry. Nobody else did it. We shot our own foot. No one else did it but we. But that goes all the way up to the governor and how we carried it out within the Cannabis Regulatory Authority.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So let me read this next one from you to you as well. I'm trying to get through these. I would want to break down these so much, but I have so many questions. I want to try to get, you know, as many of the community questions out with the time that we have. So Colorado made cannabis revenue visible to residents by hard earmarking a big chunk to school buildings and routing other dollars through dedicated funds for health, safety, and regulation. The person that asked this wants to know what your plans are, like Colorado, that directly benefited citizens with the influx of tax dollars that the cannabis brought. So, you know, it kind of went back to the question that we asked earlier, you know, what's the plans to use the cannabis funds for?
I will tell you that I have problems with earmarks, because earmarks over time, people just take them for granted and don't make sure that they use the dollars most effectively. Mm-hmm. So rather than debate about earmarking it, I'm more concerned about eliminating it. Mm-hmm. I'd rather not tax it and earmark it. Why don't we just not tax it? Yeah. So if you really want to have a thriving industry, you don't saddle it with heavy taxation. Now, if you do believe that taxation is necessary, and the legislature has a hand in this, and if they continue to tax it, my feeling has always been that money doesn't go to Santa Fe. That money stays in Tularosa. That money stays in Alamogordo. That money stays in Raton. That money should stay in the communities that generated it so that they can basically enhance services. The fact that we make the effort in these communities and then we strip it off and send it to Santa Fe is a bad public policy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that answer and everything. And, I could see, of how people could, also see that side too, of it and everything. All right. This next question, where'd it go? I almost lost. I have so many on here. What does he plan on doing to keep big corporations from bringing in flour from California, Arizona, et cetera, outside sources?
Well, absolutely. It's illegal to bring product across state lines, period.
Yeah.
So
that's federal.
until we enter into a compact with those states, which I think we should be prepared to, I think we need to weigh what's effective. I don't ever think that we're going to have big cannabis. I've been around in healthcare. I used to run Loveless Hospital System. I ran a group practice in an HMO. And everyone always told me there was going to be big healthcare. It never happened. There are certain things that will always be more local flavored. And to me, cannabis should be more local flavored. Yeah. There'll never be big salsa in New Jersey. Okay. Yeah. It's just not going to happen. So I'm not fearing about big cannabis coming in here. I'm more interested in our product being able to freely move to other markets. I think we should be a seller, not a buyer. Yeah. We only have 2 million people. So I keep wondering, why is everyone thinking that we're going to import a lot of weed into New Mexico? We only have a population of 2 million.
Yeah.
1/3 of those are under the age of 18. So we only have X number of adults. And when we scale that down to the number who actually use cannabis, it gets pretty small. So we
50% of our sales are from Texas.
Thank you. So we should be trying to ship, produce, and ship to other states. That's what we should be doing.
Yeah. And to be honest, that's going to be the inevitable future for cannabis nationwide is interstate commerce. And that's going to be the next bubble that will happen, whenever it happens, for New Mexico and the nation. That's going to be another big shutdown once people don't figure out how to become a distributor, because that's the next big move. The dispensary model, that's dying. And once we have some kind of federal intervention or legalization, that's going to be gone. And for the most part, those are going to be very niche. You'll find your craft, a lot of craft stuff there, but for the most part, it's going to be available all over the place, and it's going to be every state. And that's just, if you look at hemp, it's like that.
I don't want to freak people out. Back to that Schedule 3 issue. Keep in mind, Schedule 3 can be prescribed by a physician.
Yeah.
Can be covered by insurance. Can be moved across state lines. All of those things have yet to be defined. But we have to look at that as an opportunity we've never had before. So to me, you can be a nervous Nelly, you can be a Debbie Downer, but in my mind, this is that second breath of life that we actually needed. This is our chance to regain what we have wasted the last 3 years.
Yeah. That's all right. Cool. I'm looking through all the questions to see what else there are. I mean, I'm like, holy crap, there's so many. And some of them I'm like, well, I don't want to word it like that, exactly. But, one of them that I was brought up was, the lawsuit that we had years ago where, the tax one where the dispensaries didn't end up paying tax. And, we found out, they didn't have to this whole time. One of the questions I got is, well, what's going to happen with all that money that, these dispensaries got? Because you weren't the only one that was a part of that. There was other dispensaries, that were part of this too. And a lot of them benefited. So I'm being asked, are patients going to benefit at some point from something like that? And I figured I'd ask because I've been asked a few times on that one.
I think Larry Love has asked me that probably a dozen times. And I've tried to communicate it as clearly as I can. I can't speak for every other cannabis operator. Yeah. I can't speak for our Greenleaf, for Pure Life, or whatever. I know what we did at Ultra Health. We never charged gross receipts tax. We never did.
Yeah.
And so I told Larry and others, if we sold back in the day when it was $10 a gram, and that's the number people remember, it was $10. It wasn't 10 plus 80 cents tax. We said, we'll pay it. And then we turned around and paid the gross receipts tax to the state. I took the risk the entire time.
So I was under the impression only one other dispensary had done that. I think it was Sacred Garden. I didn't realize you did it as well, because I think they weren't paying the taxes either, I think. Sacred
Garden and Ultra Health joined together to take the case before the Supreme Court. And when we won the case, We told everybody we ate it. Now, what people forget, if we wouldn't have won that case, all that money I paid would have never come back. The fact is, we paid it and asked for it back, while others did not pay it.
And to be honest, the patients have only benefited since that lawsuit. There's certain lawsuits in the state that I say we have benefited from, and that's a huge one. Like to this day, I go to the dispensary now and don't pay taxes. Because in the CRA, it was in there, but they were still implementing the tax thing until the lawsuit finally said, no, you cannot tax this at all. And then finally, they stopped taxing it. But even when adult use started, they were kind of taxing it for a little bit. It was weird. But yeah, once that lawsuit finally settled, they did. So yeah, I had no clue that you didn't pay the taxes either. Or you weren't paying the taxes, even though you weren't supposed to be in the first place. You weren't doing anything wrong. So yeah, that's interesting. Well, thank you for that answer. That clears up, a lot on that one, because, I do get asked that one quite a bit. I'm like, I don't know, I'm not a part of those businesses, so I have no clue exactly, but now we know, we got the answer on it. Another question I got too, and this one has to deal more about the reservations. And as I know, and many other people know, but some people don't, the state doesn't have much power when it comes to the reservations. This is about the grows, but not necessarily the illegal ones. This has to deal with, I guess there's 200 greenhouses just sitting abandoned on the Navajo Nation. And they're wondering, is there any way that we can work with them to get those greenhouses to farms around the state to help local communities, grow food and stuff like that with them, versus them just being wasted?
I probably don't know the answer there, because that is mired in litigation.
Yeah.
If you pointing to the Dene Benali situation,
yeah,
I know Dene, and he made a good faith effort of trying to build these cultivations on Navajo land. It appears that he didn't have approval, and it appears the federal government stepped in. He's facing real charges. Mm-hmm. So I don't think those greenhouses are going to be released for quite a while.
Yeah, I was kind of in the same kind of boat too, but I figured I'd ask because it's probably going to get brought up again and again. But it's more of a federal issue than it is, a New Mexico state issue.
It is absolutely a federal issue.
Yeah, that's a sovereign nation essentially. The reservations. So the state doesn't have much. Okay, here's the next one, and this one actually, me, I love my consumption lounges and consumption. Outdoor consumption. Do you support outdoor consumption and changing the law to allow outdoor consumption, like concerts and stuff like that, or a bar, they have a patio?
I think outdoor consumption, it works well outdoor if effectively licensed and controlled. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's kind of silly that we have this belief that it can only be indoors. I mean, let's be real. Let's be real. Come on, it's happening. I've been to Snoop concerts and I've seen what happens outdoors. So
exactly.
We just need to be responsible, make sure there's guardrails, and I think there's a way to do it legally.
Yeah, me too. I've been, a part of that the whole time. I'm sure, most of the people in the industry have been kind of confused, like, why can't we smoke it outside? That's kind of dumb. So yeah, this last one that I'll ask from it, because, we're running out of time here, and I wish I could ask all of these questions, but Duke has seen most of the questions or a lot of the comments, on this post. So he may have seen your question already, and maybe he'll address it some other time, or maybe I could relay that if it becomes like a big thing. But this last one is, how will you support micro businesses as governor on the cannabis side?
I think micro business are, again, another critical piece of the entire puzzle. It's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think they are the big boogeyman that people would like them to be. And the way they describe it, they're less than 10% of the market.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, they're not a threat. Again, my only question is, what's a micro? Is a micro 100 plants or 1,000 plants? Yeah. And the fact is, we created this division that, oh my God, we got to have these micros because of blank. You could literally buy 150 plants, 175 plants, 200 plants. So the way the system scales anyway, it does not discourage micros. Yeah. You can be a micro, and if you want to buy 50 plants, buy 50 plants. So our system allows scalability. So it does not reward the bigger growers versus the smaller growers any more favorable. Yeah. If you said, hey, Duke, should the micro growers not pay cannabis excise tax? I'm going to tell you truthfully, it doesn't move the needle. It's not. It's okay.
Yeah.
So all these issues come down to common sense. Yeah. What I would do to turn the question around is say, do you remember we had 35 legacy operators?
Yes.
Has anybody looked around and wondered what happened to them?
I have, but not many other people.
I would say there's only 5 or 6. I'm pleased that I'm still one of them. But honest people have to look in the mirror and say, what happened?
Yeah.
Legacy operators didn't have the leg up that everyone thought they were going to have. It didn't work out the way, oh my God, they're going to control the market. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
What we created is a market that pretty much every operator is suffering.
Yeah.
That's not a good outcome either.
Yeah. And so I guess I'll ask, are you going to be in, well, I mean, it's already in the CRA and they can do this, the plant counts, are you going to be more supportive of, adjusting the plant counts down to kind of, adjust for the supply and demand, or, what's your stance on the plant count situation?
I probably can talk more intelligently than anyone else about this. And I think whatever is logical, whatever really creates a win-win, and a win-win means that our cannabis growers, our retailers, our manufacturing roles, they have to thrive.
Yeah.
For the fact that we keep losing operators and a new one pops up is not a good sign.
Yeah.
So I strongly support those decisions that allow us to thrive. And that includes shock value right here. I'll tell you, if that means a moratorium on licenses, I'm okay with it. Because I think we need to pull back on the throttle and find out what's fair. A lot of people have invested a lot of money, and I feel bad that they're going to lose it. So I think we owe a duty to those people who have trailblazed this industry and not abandoned them.
I'm on the, me, I'm on the opposite side of that one. I'm more of a open licensing kind of guy, and limiting plant counts to match the demand or keep it a little higher than what demand is. I kind of feel it'd be a better fix. It's already in the CRA and it would just take a rule change. I think that we need to try that first, at least, versus kind of, doing the default, what every other state has done, which is just close it down, lock it down, and, try to do it that way. I kind of feel we have something that we've done different in the state. And I think we need to try it first before we, kind of change everything and say, well, let's do it this because this state did that. But if you look at California and Colorado, only 30 to 40% of the cities allow cannabis sales in the first place. That leaves 60 to 70% of the traditional market running those cities. We don't really have that issue in New Mexico. Is the traditional market there? Yeah. But we don't have 60, 70% of the cities ran by it only because there's no retails there. I feel that's something that we did differently that has only shown positivity versus anything opposite. But that's just me. And, we'll see what time has to say with it. And I appreciate your honesty on that one too. Even though we don't always agree on everything, and the shocker guys, like me and Duke don't agree on many things. But, time will tell, and I guess we'll see. They came out with the supply and demand study, so we'll see what comes from it. Also, we're running a little over time, so my apologies. I told you this would be 1 hour long, but there's one last question that I thought was funny and great to ask, and it says, "Do you even smoke?"
Unlike President Clinton, I do inhale.
Okay, so yeah, cannabis user. So there's the answer there. The final one of the day.
I'm not embarrassed to say I'm not a blue blazer Republican. I do inhale and I support cannabis users. Period.
Yeah, true. Actually, I remember one time we gifted you some flour one time from our personal jars. I remember that actually after a rules hearing. So
in a parking lot.
Yeah, in a parking lot. Yeah.
So I know this sounds terrible for me to say, and people are going to throw in my face saying, "Oh, did you hear what Duke said?" I look forward to the day someday where we could have an event at the governor's mansion. Yeah. And let's see what happens.
Oh, that'd be cool, man. That'd be great. A cannabis-friendly, governor. Because I've been to the governor mansion before, and I think that'd be something awesome. And I think it'd be cool. So, Duke, I appreciate you, coming on the show and everything. Sorry, we went over a couple of minutes, but I had to get some of these great important questions. So I thank you so much. Good luck on the campaign and everything. I'll be looking out for all the candidates, what goes on, and we'll see how the debate goes. So, man, I appreciate you coming on, and thank you again, and good luck, brother.
Thank you, Chef. Have a great one.
You too, man. Good seeing you.